So, 1793, you had Sonsonnax, right? Sonsonnax declares Haiti free. All the Haitian slaves are free. Post the rights of man up everywhere, he says. He invoked Auger, 1793. Got to St. Louverture to change his mind. Stop fighting for the Spain. Start fighting for the French. So, he did a lot, right? But then on the other hand, okay, some white asshole in Haiti said, okay, everybody's free. Somebody proclaimed freedom. That's, even Abraham Lincoln, the Emancipation Proclamation is supposed to be, yeah, he proclaimed the South. An area he had no jurisdiction over is free. So that'd be like me right now just saying, okay, everybody in Botswana, everybody in Nigeria and Russia and China and the United Kingdom and hell, everybody in Texas. If there's slavery in Texas, I therefore, by the power vested in me, banish slavery in Texas. I mean, it's a nice sentiment, but unless you actually got the Pluto. If there are any slaves in Pluto, I, Jonathan Masters, I'm signing an executive order right here, right now, today. I declare all the slaves on Pluto free. So, yeah, by edict, by wear blue hats in the morning, red hats in the evening, right? By executive order, I decreed it by edict. I decreed it by edict. Number one, I got a debate on this, and I think this is going to be fantastic. To me, it seems like it's going to be Shays Rebellion. Shays Rebellion begins today, and it's a fantastic beginning. It's just a peaceful shutting down of a county court. But also the end of the Middle Ages. 1526, Louis II, the Hungarian Empire is going to get crushed by Solomon the Magnificent. Solomon the Wonderful. Solomon the Magnificent. Is it? Okay, so first of all, is that even true? The Middle Ages, the Dark Ages? All because the Battle of Mohacs? If the Battle of Mohacs is so important, how come I've never heard of this Battle of Mohacs? Solomon the Magnificent, is that even a real person? How come I've never heard of Solomon the Magnificent? I've heard of like Frederick the Great, right? There's Frederick the Great and, Charles the Fat and Charles the Fair and Charles the Prosperous and Charles the Fat. So you have all these, but the Magnificent, you got to be pretty arrogant to go around, hey, my name is Jonathan, but most people call me Jonathan the Magnificent. So that's, fantastic. 1904, the Dark Ages ending is pretty fucking important. So what's more important? Netflix is like a big powerhouse now, streaming service, right? Netflix and chill is a term like Google, right? So Netflix used to just be a DVD service. You just rented DVDs from Netflix and they'd send it to you. That was 1997 is when they started their company. They started out with 700 movies, August 29th. So Netflix is pretty big, right? So you got Netflix, and you have the Indian of the Middle Ages. So you had some white asshole that said Haitians are free. Who gives a shit? That's Sonsonnax. You just want to take all the credit in the world. Yeah, Lincoln, all the slaves in somebody else's domain is free. Oh, fantastic, Lincoln. Great, Sonsonnax. That really helps us a lot there, Sonsonnax, Lincoln. In 1864, William Huggins discovered a chemical composition of a celestial nebula. Apparently, galaxies and nebula are two different things in GC 6543. So, nebula, I don't know, doesn't make the top 10 list, right? So, 1930, the last 36 people on St. Kilda Island board the Harebell to evacuate to Morvern, Scotland. Let's just read these, okay? And maybe one or two comments, but don't go into it too deeply, all right? So, St. Kilda Island is close to Scotland. They have all these problems, pneumonia and, the Spanish flu and just a bunch of invasions and this and that, and so eventually in 1930 they applied to get evacuated, and they got evacuated. So 36 people in St. Kilda Island. I didn't even know St. Kilda existed, but the last time there's been permanent people, living, permanent housing was in 1930. So it's good. 36 people were saved, right? 36 people got to get the fuck up out of St. Kilda, and now they're living in Scotland. 1944, 15,000 American troops of 28th Infantry Division marched down Champs-Élysées, Paris. So the liberation of Paris, American Antifa. We have liberated Paris. It was Antifa that liberated Paris, France, from the Nazis. 1970, this is number 8, Chicano moratorium. You're going to have 25,000 march in East LA, the biggest anti-war protest by a minority group, and Salazar, Ward, and Diaz are going to get killed. It's kind of crazy because you don't see very many. The Chicano moratorium, the Chicanos were getting big, 25,000 Chicano moratorium. It ended in tragedy, and they don't do it anymore. So it was almost like the violence had worked on the Chicano. That's terrible. We need to see more Chicano moratoriums, and it was very selfless because it's against the Vietnam War. This isn't against, something specifically just for the Chicano. It would turn into, the police brutality thing. And then Salazar, Ward, and Diaz. Why did, Chicanos are opposed to the Vietnam War in 1970, and 3 of them had to die? So if anything, the Chicano moratorium needs to be remembered even more, especially so because of the tragedy. They had a protest. They had a big, large assembly. They did what they came out to do, have a demonstration to show the world that, there's a lot of brown people that are against the Vietnam War. 1965, number 7. First astronaut in space, Cooper, Gemini, number 5. He's going to speak to an aquanaut in water. Carpenter, so you got this guy in a spaceship 100 miles in the air, and then you got someone 200 miles in the water, and they talk to each other through radio or whatever. 1965, so that's fantastic, right? That's a very unique distinction. The first astronaut in space talks to the first astronaut or aquanaut in water. Cooper and Carpenter. Gemini 5. 1786, Daniel Shays, my boy, and the regulators rout a runaway government court from sitting in Northampton, Massachusetts. And it's peaceful, and they just have 700 armed farmers, and then eventually, the government doesn't want to sit anymore, and they run off, and they're all scared. But then government, later on was like, wait a second. If that government runs off, then other government's going to run off, and then we're just going to have government always running off. Well, then there won't be no government. We can't have that. That's a revolution. Daniel Shays is doing all this shit, taxation without representation, all the ideals of the revolution. But apparently all the founding fathers they don't like it when, the regular people are involved in this revolution, naked business. The elites can do the revolution thing, but not the Daniel Shays of the world. Well, Daniel Shay is an American revolutionary. He is a soldier. He is a farmer. And his concerns should have been addressed. The fact that they're so pissed off that they're ready to go to war. They're ready to go to war over this shit. Daniel Shays Rebellion begins today, August 29th, 1786. Should that be at the top? Probably, right? The ending of the Middle Ages is right up there. Daniel Shays, this is important for the Constitution. This is important for a lot of reasons. But the U.S. Constitution was written because of Daniel Shays and his rebellion. The Articles of Confederation, they said, was too weak. Daniel Shays and his rebellion was showing that the centralized government, we need to make a stronger, more centralized government. George Washington's going to come out of retirement, and then we're going to get the U.S. Constitution. Without Shays' rebellion, you don't have the U.S. Constitution. So to get folks to think about why are the things the way they are, I think it's a good thing. So Antifa, okay, you had the anti-fascist U.S. forces in 1944, right? Victory Parade, August 29th. So good for us, right? The first original Antifa, anti-fascist. We liberated France. We liberated Paris in 1526. You're going to have Solomon the Magnificent, Solomon, you know, the wonderful, the honorable, the just, the remarkable, the formidable. Jonathan the Formidable is going to crush the Hungarian Empire, right? Jonathan the Formidable is, you know, going to, so Battle of Mohacs, that was 500 years ago. The Dark Ages ended probably with the Gutenberg Bible printing. But when I was thinking about this, okay, Solomon the Magnificent, he's the Ottoman Empire, and then Louis II is the Hungarian Empire, so, you know, two empires is terrible. But then I looked at this sentence, Britain liberates Hong Kong from Japan. Now, Japan had liberated Hong Kong from Britain earlier, because Britain was occupying it, but then they liberated, then they allowed Hong Kong, and now Hong Kong is still like being fucked with, right? Hong Kong in China, like in Hong Kong, China's trying to occupy Hong Kong now. So Britain was occupying it, then Japan was occupying. Then Britain frees Hong Kong from Japan. Can that could be possible? That's a possibility. Can one empire destroy another empire? Yeah, they can. And is that a good thing? Yes, empires are terrible. You don't need an empire. We need to, you know, you don't need an empire. So getting the Hungarian Empire, that ends the Dark Ages for the Hungarian Empire. So the Hungarian Empire is definitely brought into, you know, a brand new light, a century of light. But the end of the Dark Ages, maybe, I don't know. So you have the Abenaki, let's see, Queen Anne's War, the Second Battle of Haverhill. So let's see, Gottlieb Daimler, the right wagon. This man is going to create the first motorcycle. Gottlieb, he's going to get his design patented on August 29th, 1885. Gottlieb Daimler. Patents the world's first internal combustion motorcycle. A motorcycle. The right wagon. So fantastic, right? You assholes just sitting on your ass, sitting on the couch eating bonbons, and yet here you got, you know, this Gottlieb. What's Gottlieb Daimler doing? He's inventing motorcycles. That was in 1885, right? Not 130, 40, 50-something years ago. So what should be number one? The creation of the motorcycle, Netflix. Goodyear is going to be, you know, Goodyear's founded. The first astronaut in space, Daniel Shays. The Battle of Haverhill. 1904, number two, Warner Forsman, the father pioneer of cardiac catheterization, is born. The reason why I put this guy up so high, until I find, you know, anything better or worse, he's probably going to, you know, retain this number two spot. Shays Rebellion is my favorite. So don't get me wrong, Shays Rebellion is my favorite. 1904, Warner Forsman, the cardiac catheterization. So this dude, he went ahead and took a pipe, a hose, up his elbow and into his heart. And the whole idea of a tube being able to go into your heart, you could put, you know, whatever drugs and whatever the heart needs straight into it by tube instead of using, you know, a needle. And back in his time, people were afraid that if you stuck a tube into a human heart, then that's it. You'd kill it. You'd stop the heart from beating, and then it would just, you know, that's it. That's all she wrote. But Warner Forsman didn't believe so. Forsman actually, because people are so skeptical, he said, well, shit, I'm going to experiment on myself. He was his own guinea pig. And so when I think about his remarkable, you know, his feat, the cardiac catheterization, when they thought that, you know, you might die, basically I could feel that accomplishment in my veins. Literally, I could feel it in my arteries and veins. So Warner Forsman, you know, whether, I don't know how, you know, important cardiac catheterization is. I don't know if it's the most important, if anybody uses it, or if you don't even, maybe you can't even use it. Maybe it's not even, you know, worth anything. But if you're going to, you know, convince other people that other shit with Jonas Salk and, you know, some of these other assholes, they use like some other people as guinea pigs. Use yourself as a guinea pig first. Be like Warner Forceman. Warner Forceman, you know, he did on himself, so shit. That's, you know, mad respect, brother. He would be the father, right, of cardiac catheterization. Why? And then apparently he did it, there was no discomfort and no pain. Which is, you know, he did it and then walked around and went to another level, like to the second floor or some shit. So, yeah, there you go. There's my top 10 list for August 29th. And what else we got, you know, what else is going on, you know? Getting into, you know, more of the specific details. Chicano moratorium. It's one of the largest assemblies of Mexican Americans ever. 20,000, 30,000 east, you know, marched East LA. Angel, Gilbert Diaz, Lynn Ward, and Ruben Salazar, who was a journalist, 42 years old, going to get shot by a tear gas projectile fired by the cops. So Ruben Salazar was killed by the cops. LA County Sheriff's Office, violence, it's a police riot. So you got the largest anti-Vietnam War protest by a minority group in the U.S. and big shocker, you got a police riot in response. So yeah, there should have been more. Should have been more. Oh, I'm losing my voice. So Shay's Rebellion. I want to talk about Shay's Rebellion. But then just, you know, go on home. Just, you know, get on out of here. Just, somebody wrote a note, Shay's Rebellion, to one of the authority figures. They said, I'm going to come back in the winter when the leaves are on the ground. When the leaves, they didn't say, they said when the leaves are on the ground, I'm going to come back and pay you a short visit. This is according to Howard Zinn. But Shay's Rebellion. Shay's Rebellion. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. I want to get into all of it, but I guess just overview. Daniel Shays is just a poor farmhand, and then he joins the Continental Army, wanting to do good for the nation, fights the Revolutionary War. He's an American revolutionary. Daniel Shays is an American revolutionary, and you had the state legislature adjourned without addressing all these foreclosures. So on August 29th, a well-organized force of protesters formed in Northampton, Massachusetts, and successfully prevented the county court from sitting. And all they did was just, you know, walked around on horseback. They called themselves regulators, and this is, you know, August 29th, 1786. Shay's Rebellion begins. Springfield, Massachusetts, right next to Springfield, Northampton, Massachusetts. So just like Wesley and the Princess Bride, he's a poor farmhand. He's a nobody. Daniel Shays starts as a nobody and ends as a nobody. He's almost, you know that hell, ain't that the story of humanity? You start a nobody, you end as a nobody. So he's an American revolutionary who fought at the battles of Lexington and Concord, the very first shots heard around the world. He was there at the Battle of Bunker Hill, that blood fest. That Bunker Hill was Hamburger Hill. Daniel Shays was there at Hamburger Hill, Bunker Hill, Lexington, Concord, and he was there at the Battle of Saratoga. So my guy, he's a soldier, he's a troops, he fought the American Revolution. You would think Daniel Shays is a goddamn hero in America, right? He's a superstar, just being treated like a god. No. Daniel Shays isn't getting paid jack shit, and he's injured. So he has to keep on what? Looting in random houses, and he's got an injury. You know, his leg's all busted. Now he's got to go back home. He's got to be a farmer with a busted leg, not getting any pay. George Washington lied, so what the fuck? George Washington expected Daniel Shays to just keep on robbing, just stealing, and then, you know, what, from the British, and feed himself? How are we going to stay in the, you know, U.S. Revolutionary War? To stay in the massive killing fields of the war without being paid, without your legs. So Shays, you know, got tired of the shit and walks home. and he goes home, he sees he's got debts, and then he's going to get taken to court for the debts, right? So he was trying to pay for it, but now his land and shit's being taken away, and a lot of other shit's, a lot of other bullshit was going on too. But Daniel Shays, it just seems like shit just keeps on piling on top of him, shit upon shit. It's like, who's got a worse life, Shays or Job? But he's an American revolutionary. Battle of Lexington, Battle of Bunker Hill, Battle of Saratoga. And yet what happened to Daniel Shays? He dies poor and obscure. Daniel Shays organized the 700 armed farmers and led them to Springfield. Shays meets up with the state general who gives Shays permission to parade around Springfield. Shays parade got bigger and bigger, and the anti-people government court postponed their land-stealing schemes for the day, and then adjourned the court altogether in retaliation to Shays. Samuel Adams is going to write up the Riot Act. He writes up a riot act and says, hey, I'm going to say you're rioting if you do this and that. And a resolution suspending habeas corpus. Go ahead, pick on Lincoln. How come nobody points out Samuel Adams suspended habeas corpus to keep people in jail indefinitely without a trial? In Worcester, 160 insurgents appeared at the courthouse. The sheriff read the riot act. The insurgents said they'd leave only if the judges left. The sheriff said he's going to hang them all, and then somebody came up behind the sheriff and put a sprig of hemlock in his hat. The judges left. A little rebellion now and then is a good thing. This is what Thomas Jefferson said about Shays' rebellion. A little rebellion now and then is a good thing. We need, freedom. We need a rebellion like this every 20 years. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with blood of tyrants and patriots. It's its natural manure. We need a little rebellion. He's like, God, we're in want of a rebellion. Every 20 years, at least, we've got to have a Shays rebellion, says Thomas Jefferson. We've got to have a Shays rebellion. But what happens to the people in Shays rebellion? They get hung. There's a battle, and then it's over. But at one point in time, Daniel Shays is 700 strong. And how did he lose? What's the difference between Shays and George Washington's revolution? George Washington, he's all about taxation without representation. He's all about, the damn independents, the damned oppressors. What's the difference? Shays is an American revolutionary, true blue, actual soldier. One of us right there on the front lines, an American revolutionary, for no pay, for nothing. Not only do you get nothing, you got a busted hip or leg and a ton of debt that he can't pay off. Lost his damn leg, lost his house, lost his leg because of this fucking George Washington's American Revolution. Yeah, more like revolves the poor into the cannon rudders of dustbins of history straight into hell. James Madison in Federalist 10, he says that the majority will want paper money, the abolition of debts, and the worst crime of all, an equal division in property. Well, shit. You got to protect the opulent minority from the indigent majority. You got to protect the opulent from the minority, the poor rich. That's the point of the Constitution, to protect the rich, to stop any type of land reform, to stop the abolition of debt, to stop paper money. It took Abraham Lincoln's revolution to get us paper money. But in equal division in property, we never got none of this. James Madison's War of 1812, he killed Tecumseh. James Madison is the one that wrote the Constitution. Fuck you, James Madison. And fuck the Constitution. Protect the opulent minority from the indigent majority. Fuck you, James fucking Madison. So we don't get a Shays Rebellion. We don't get a revolutionary America. We got a revolutionary government that turned into tyrannical right-wingers the day after the revolution. Daniel Shays fought in the name of the same ideals of the U.S. Revolution, a revolution which forgot to give 90% of Americans the right to vote, a revolution that was fought because of taxation without representation. Don't tread on me, don't put your boot on my neck, fuck you imperialist redcoat bastards, telling us we can't run our own country. Of course we can run our own fucking country. This is a republic, a democratic republic where we run our own fucking country. That's the point of the revolution. Daniel Shays wanted to participate in power. He didn't want to lose his land. Bankers are stealing land away from the revolutionary soldiers and farmers. This is their pensions. If Daniel Shays didn't fight for himself and all the rest, who would have? Nobody. Hundreds, thousands of Americans lost their lands and belongings without a whisper of protest. The dustbins of history. Shays Rebellion needs to be talked about. We need to talk about it all the time. Not just because, it's kind of a good story. Think about the solidarity of going to, shutting down a government court. But it's also not because he loses, right? Daniel Shays shuts down government courts. He's like, no foreclosures in my neck of the woods. And all these farmers got together with their shotguns. They said, you're not going to steal the land of farmers around these parts, you hear? That's when America was fucking great. We actually did participate in our government. We were shutting down the courthouses left and right. And if Daniel Shays would have wrote a constitution, perhaps we would have the society that Daniel Shays wanted to bring about. But there's a time and era when our friends and family and neighbors were being chucked out into the streets, that we went out and we shut down the courthouses and we shut down the government. Daniel Boone and Abraham Lincoln, Kentucky's main birth sons, were kicked out of Kentucky because of terrible bankster corruption and land grants and titles. Daniel Boone, Abraham Lincoln couldn't stay in Kentucky because of the corrupt fucking bullshit. Abraham Lincoln you can't get much better than these, and they couldn't even get land, they couldn't even stay. Shays Rebellion sucks because it fails. Shay dies alone, cold, afraid, penniless, unknown, obscure. But I think we need to highlight Shays Rebellion even more importantly than like Bacon's Rebellion, which was important, solidarity. But the U.S. Constitution is supposed to be revered like it's some grand, magnificent document that couldn't be reproduced or made better. It's perfect in every way. Yeah, there's a bunch of slave clauses in it. It's not perfect. It's highly flawed. There's an electoral college, the fugitive slave clause, the 3/5 clause, the impossible amending process. But the Constitution is highly flawed for one major reason. Shays Rebellion. The whole point, the Constitution got written because of Shays Rebellion. Thomas Jefferson said we needed Shays Rebellion every 20 years. That rebellions feasted upon the blood of tyrants and patriots. That the U.S. needed a Shays Rebellion every 20 years to stay healthy. But Thomas Jefferson's in France. And in America, the governments of the colonized and the banksters, they're going to check out the Articles of Confederation, call George Washington out of retirement, and get the Constitution written. Why? Because we can't have Shays Rebellions anymore. No more Shays Rebellions. No more revolutions. No more Americans standing up for ourselves. Shay had fought for America, and he wanted a piece of America that he fought for, but he didn't get it. And that's a fucking tragedy, and it's bullshit. And we should talk about it today because Daniel Shays is a true blue American. Daniel Shays should be on our $1 bill. What, George Washington, that slave-owning piece of shit? Fuck him. Fuck him. Instead of offering a relief valve for Daniel Shays and, the other American revolutionaries and, the farmers. The U.S. Constitution was written in order to make sure that another U.S. revolution never happens ever again. Well, John Locke was born on August 29th. John Locke, he says that the Second Amendment, you have to have not only the means, but also, it's not just a right to have a revolution, but the people have to be provided the means to overthrow the government, because that's not a theoretical, when you're forcing the people will choose you if they want you, and if they don't want you, then they have a right to overthrow you. That's John Locke, that's the Declaration of Independence. So there's a lot of ideals. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, all these ideals, right? But Daniel Shays stands up, and then all of a sudden, so there's some bullshit there. It's some bullshit. Now, a brand new Constitution, that's, I think if he would have, Daniel Shays would have had a constitutional convention and a brand new Constitution, if he actually would have had, like, the legal framework for what kind of society, instead of just intimidating the fuck out of the government and then just saying, okay, good, we scared them away, but now what kind of society are we going to create? Because if our government can't be better than theirs, then eventually theirs is going to take over. So we got to have ourselves a better government. And it's got to be a good change, a revolution. You know, it changes everything. It overturns systems. It destroys systems. But it also has to bring about something good, something better, something